This will unlock the Chicago Bulls. We're going to be talking about some NBA draft prospects that the Chicago Bulls should consider if they're available in this upcoming NBA draft. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you have found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And so before we jump into it, first want to remind you that 72% of you that watch are not subscribed to the channel. So like Modest but Zealous does, you need to slam dunk on that subscribe button for us, as it means a lot to us here at Bulls Digest as we try to reach our end of the season subscriber goal. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the content for today. And so we are talking about NBA draft prospects that the Chicago Bulls should consider if they are available in this upcoming NBA draft. And so if you do not know, the NBA draft combine is set to take place here starting tomorrow in Chicago. This is a great time, for the NBA draft prospects coming up here into this draft, because now they get a chance to showcase their skills in 5-on-5 scrimmages. They get a chance to do some testing. They get a chance to interview as well. So this is huge for them as far as improving their draft stock here. And so let's go ahead and talk about the first NBA draft prospect that I think the Chicago Bulls should certainly consider, and that is Carter Bryant here out of Arizona. And so let's talk about first the things that I like about Carter Bryant and why I think he's a great fit for us. And so first and foremost, I think that I love his motor. I think that when you get a chance to look at his highlights, you will see a player that definitely plays with a lot of juice out there on the offense and the defensive end of the floor. And I've said this before, I think that if you give me a player that plays with a lot of energy and effort and things like that, you can live with the mistakes. I think that that's something that a player really, kind of grows out of in time. And so we'll see, as we find out a little bit more about his work ethic and things like that. But I love his motor, and I think that that motor is something that immediately would translate to the Chicago Bulls, because for a team that I think is still trying to get its identity, and a team that needs to get an identity as it tries to get back into being a contender, you need players like this. And so I think Carter Bryant first has the motor. Next with him, what I like is his athleticism. I think his athleticism on the defensive end and the offensive end of the floor, I think that that shows in a lot of his highlights and things like that. This is a player that he's very much like a slasher. He's also a player that is pretty good in the catch and shoot. We're going to get into the numbers here in a moment, so I do like that about him. But defensively, he plays with a ton of energy out there. I think he's going to give you some effort there. I think he's certainly going to get over some switches and things. And I think he's a player that, he will hound you a little bit. And so I do like the fact that he is that type of defender. Again, one of the things that the Chicago Bulls need is they need an edge on defense. And so Carter Bryant is certainly that type of player. And he's versatile. So he's versatile in the sense that I think he can probably switch on multiple positions. And so because of that versatility, I certainly love that. And so next, I think another thing too to like about his defense is just his blocking shots. I think that his blocking shots as far as like chase downs and stuff like that, and using his athleticism there, I think that that's something that definitely could translate. And again, you need that. I'm not going to say he's going to be a rim protector or anything like that, but maybe he translates into a player that can erase, mistakes and things like that. And so next, looking at his numbers, look, he's 6'8", he's 225, he's 19 years old. I believe he did come off the bench for Arizona. So the numbers are not going to wow you necessarily, but I think that when you're drafting him, you're looking more so for the upside here. So 6.5 points a game, 0.9 in his steals. He had a block a game. He had an assist a game, 4.1 rebounds, 69.5% from the free throw line, 37.1 from three, and 46% from the field. And so with the free throw percentage, that's something that does concern me. It's going to have to go up, especially for a player that utilizes a lot of his athleticism and is likely going to get fouled a lot. You're going to need to convert your free throws. It reminds me a little bit of kind of the situation going on with Jonathan Kuminga. He's not a very good free throw shooter for as much as he has the ball and his slashing and things like that. So he would have to get better there. Next, I think you love the three-point shooting. That's something that could translate to the next level. You want to see that, obviously, some more from him, especially if you were to go off and draft him. But if the Chicago Bulls were to get him, that's good numbers to see that he's able to shoot that three ball, because that's a staple of the Chicago Bulls. Next up, his field goal percentage, not bad, 46%. I think that I would like to see that go up, especially a little bit more for a player that likes to, attack the way that he does. As far as the things that he needs to get better at, he needs to get better as a shot creator. I think that you can tell that he's just not as comfortable and just doesn't necessarily have a deep bag necessarily to go out there and you can give him the ball and say, go get me a bucket. So he needs to get better there. And that kind of goes hand in hand with his handle. I think that as your handle gets a little bit better, and talking about your dribbling, when I say handle, so he needs to be able to feel that comfortable on the floor that he can just pretty much take the defense and do what he wants to do with them when you're able to just kind of take that handle, turn it into shots, and turn it into other favorable angles for your teammates to get backdoor cuts and things like that. So he needs to get better with his handle and as a shot creator. But he is pretty good. I think as a standstill shooter, he could be better. But this is a player that is very raw. So make no mistake about it. You're looking at this from an upside standpoint, but the size at 225, he's going to have to get a bit stronger like all these NBA prospects. But I could see, maybe a reality here where there is him and Matas Buzelis filling a lane for Josh Giddey and Kobe White. He definitely has that type of athleticism that he could be scary. He reminds you a bit of Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry for sure, like a mix of them. And if I can think about a player that has been very successful in this league, he also reminds me of Andre Iguodala. Like I get shades of Iguodala as well. And so, that's pretty solid, especially if he can get to that point. I'm not saying that he's going to be like Iggy, but certainly he reminds me of that type of player. And another comparison that I saw is a Jeff Green. I do see some similarities there. Jeff Green won an NBA championship with the Denver Nuggets. And so those are some players that he compares to. All right. And so next, I want to jump into this next player. And this is based off of something that I saw here in the comments. So shout out there. Definitely wanted to take a look at him. And so he's a player that played overseas here in the Euro. And his name is Noa Essengue here. And so I'm going to bring him up. And so he's a player that certainly when we're talking about raw and upside, he is that player. And so once again, played overseas. I believe he's 18 years old at this point in time. But let's go ahead and just really talk about the things that I like about him. And so first and foremost, like this guy, when you talk about athleticism, he certainly has athleticism. You see him shooting it off 1 foot. There are several times in highlights where he is literally going to the basket, and I mean, he's got some nice Euros. He's got some nice step throughs, the step backs and stuff like that. Like all that looks super fluid. So the athleticism certainly jumps off the tape. I think offensively, it jumps off the tape with what he can do there. Next, another thing that I liked about his game is the catch and shoot ability. And so he has the ability certainly to catch and shoot. It's not a shot that looks broke. It reminds me of some of the things that I would say about Matas Buzelis, where he didn't have the best percentage, but it definitely, the form-wise, it looks good. And so his form and everything else looks good, and he was terrific, I think, in a lot of catch-and-shoot stuff. Next up with him, the transition game is something where I think he would just really just eat in. I think that would be an outstanding fit for the Chicago Bulls when you look at him, and we're going to talk about his size in a moment, but his ability to get into transition and run, like I think that would be scary because he puts a lot of pressure on defenses that way. And so his ability to get out in transition, I think, is nice. Next up, I think that as far as him being a passer, I think he's pretty terrific. I think he can be a connector type of player for you. And what I mean by connector, think of like a Draymond Green with the dribble handoffs and things like that. Like I think he can be that type of player in the offense with the way that he passes it. He looks pretty fluent with that. And so you see a bit of the playmaking ability for him. Next up, defensively, as far as his lateral quickness and just that athleticism, I think a lot of the highlights show that this is a player that could really be a disruptor. Like I think that he could switch on multiple positions. I think that his length is going to really impact people. He needs to get stronger, which is one of the things we'll talk about here in a moment. But as far as just the athleticism, the ability to switch, the lateral quickness, I absolutely love that. And again, you're talking about bringing identity to the defense, which is what the Chicago Bulls absolutely need. So next, as far as the numbers are concerned, so he's 6'10", 200. He averaged 12.4 points a game, 1.4 with the steals. So talking about that activity defensively, 5.3 with the rebounds there. Shot 73% from the free throw line. I like that. I think it could be a lot better. 29.4 from downtown. And so that is something that we'll talk about here in the moment. He definitely needs to get better there. 56% from the field. And so, just looking at the 3-point percentage again, his shot doesn't look broke. Remember, Modest Bazelis, look, he struggled coming in. I think he shot 29% in the G League Ignite, but he took off this next season with the Chicago Bulls. Would love to have him work with Peter Patton, but he's not going to be there. But I think that as long as he has the work ethic and just what we're seeing here, I think he has a ton of upside there. Next, I love the fact that he's already shooting pretty well from the field at 56%, and so that is an added plus. I love the fact that he's getting the steals and at 12.4 points a game. And once again, this is a prospect that's very raw, but I do like the fact that he could be a floor spacer for you. Talked about the fact that he will have to get stronger, and I think that that's going to be the constant with just about all these players. I think his standing reach, one of the facts that I saw, 9 and 3, so for his standing reach, and so 9 feet 3 with just a standing reach, that just lets you know the length for him. One of the things that I saw too, as far as him getting better at the rim, 46.7 of his layups in the half court he converted on, so he's got to get a lot better there as far as being a finisher, and that kind of goes into the strength for him. So he's got to get stronger so he's not fading away from the defense. But I do like him. He reminds me of a couple different players, and so he reminds me of a player that we once had back in the day here. And so the first player that he reminds me of, the first player that he reminds me of now currently is going to be Tejan Salome, that plays for the Charlotte Hornets. So I think he's got a ton of upside. And then as far as the Chicago Bulls player that he reminds me of Thabo Savalosha. So he was drafted with the Chicago Bulls in 2006. I believe he was traded to the Thunder. And then with that draft pick that we got from the Thunder, I believe that's how we got Taj Gibson. And so anyway, those are some players that he reminds me of. I'm not saying that he's going to be those players, but he just has shades of that in his game. So let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys are thinking here. Do you feel like either one of these players are players that you would like to take a chance on? Once again, you have Noah here, played in the EuroLeague, got a ton of upside. Both of these players are quite raw for the most part. And then you also have, again, another player that played here in college off the bench, Carter Bryant. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.